On June 8, still 1969, a Gallup poll recorded that 55% of Americans believed the United States should withdraw from Vietnam, the first time anti-war sentiment outpaced support. After World War I, America enjoyed booming prosperity, a growing middle class, and celebrated the Marshall Plan's economic revitalization across Europe. Meanwhile, Soviet advances in Eastern Europe and Asia deepened us fears, prompting policymakers to view Southeast Asia as the Cold War's next front line. Consequently, the conflict in Vietnam transformed from a colonial struggle into a proxy war pitting American anti-communist resolve against perceived Soviet expansion. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy dispatched the first American military advisors to South Vietnam, marking the United States' initial direct involvement. The policy of containment, formally outlined in Edict 668 of 1950, defined a strategy to halt global communist expansion. By the mid-1960s, college campuses erupted with anti-war demonstrations as students publicly questioned America's involvement in Vietnam. On August 10, Ken Tu Ev Ho Chi Minh declared the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, asserting independence from both French colonial rule and Japanese occupation. During the First Indochina War, the United States supplied over $1 million in military equipment to French forces fighting the Viet Minh. The aid reflected Truman Doctrine's commitment to assist free peoples confronting external pressure, expanding us involvement beyond Europe. The 1954 Geneva Accords temporarily split Vietnam at the 17th parallel, with BOI representing the South in the historic agreement. Following the accords, Ho Chi Minh solidified control over North Vietnam, instituting a communist government that would resist foreign influence. In 1955, Nguyen Dinh ousted Bose Oberst, becoming South Vietnam's president and pledging staunch anti-communist governance while securing extensive US military and economic aid to bolster his regime. Bind's authoritarian rule alienated Buddhists, culminating in the 1963 Tet Offensive massacre where protesters were violently suppressed, deepening domestic dissent. President Dwight D. Eisenhower popularized the Domino Theory in 1954, warning that the fall of one nation could trigger regional communist spread. Kennedy expanded the advisory contingent from 900 in 1961 to roughly 16,000 by late 1963. Signaling deeper commitment without ground troops. In Augustinus, President Lyndon B. Johnson secured the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, granting Congress authority for full-scale military action in Vietnam. The 1968 Tet Offensive shocked the nation, revealing that victory was far from assured and sparking a dramatic rise in anti-war sentiment. Television broadcast vivid combat scenes into American homes, making the distant conflict visually immediate and intensifying public debate over the war. The Mae He, Kent State shootings, where National Guard fire killed for students, epitomized the volatile split between pro-war establishment and anti-war protesters. In the summer of 1970, anti-war protests spread across campuses, with more than 500,000 demonstrators gathering in Washington, D.C., demanding withdrawal. A 1970 Defense Department briefing disclosed roughly 100,000 US troops remained in Vietnam, underscoring continued military involvement despite mounting public opposition. In June 1971, former Defense Secretary Robert McNamara testified before Congress, labeling the conflict a tragic mistake and urging immediate negotiated settlement. October 1971 saw the New York Times publish the Pentagon Papers, a classified history exposing governmental deception about war progress and casualties. April 1972. President Nixon authorized secret bombings of Cambodia, targeting Viet Cong sanctuaries and further expanding the conflict beyond Vietnam's borders. May 1972, the United States commenced Operation Linebacker, its first sustained bombing campaign against North Vietnam since 1970, aiming to pressure peace talks. In July 1972, National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger met secretly with North Vietnamese envoy Le Duc in Paris, laying groundwork for negotiations. November 1972. Richard Nixon won re-election over George McGovern, campaigning on peace with honor and promised to fulfill the ceasefire timeline. January 1973. The Paris Peace Accords were signed, establishing a ceasefire, a U.S. troop withdrawal timetable, and return of prisoners of war. March 1973 marked the final departure of US combat troops from Saigon, ending direct American military engagement after nearly a decade. April 30th, SIL, 1975. North Vietnamese forces captured Saigon, effectively ending the Republic of Vietnam and unifying the country under communist rule. The fall triggered Operation Frequent Wind, evacuating over 130,000 refugees, including embassy staff, from rooftops and naval ships in a frantic scramble. In 1975-76, Vietnam's gross domestic product fell by roughly 50%, reflecting war-induced devastation and crippling its already fragile economy. November 1973. Congress passed the War Powers Resolution, requiring presidential notification to Congress within 48 hours of deploying forces, curbing unilateral war actions. The resolution sparked enduring debate over executive authority, influencing legislative scrutiny during later conflicts such as the 1991 Gulf War. On November 13th, SIL, 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated on the National Mall, inscribing the names of over 58,000 fallen service members. Designed by Maya Lin, the minimalist black granite wall invites quiet reflection, becoming an iconic symbol of reconciliation and collective memory. Each year on Memorial Day, veterans and families gather at the wall, placing flowers and leaving letters, fostering national healing. A 1985 Gallup poll showed 60% of Americans regarded the Vietnam War as a mistake, underscoring lingering public disillusionment. The war's legacy continues to shape US foreign policy, prompting heightened public scrutiny of military interventions and fostering caution in Iraq and Afghanistan.